Hey guys, it's Shea. It's been a while. You look good. While I've been gone, a lot of things have happened. I graduated, I got a job, I bought a house, but one thing hasn't changed. I still love the Nintendo 64. To show my appreciation for the Nintendo 64 and everything that I love about it, I've been trying to put together like a pretty big video project, and I've been trying to do that for a while. 3 years! So while I was doing research for this project that I want to do, I came across a pretty interesting piece of Nintendo 64 trivia that doesn't really fit in the scope of my project, but I also think is a little too interesting to ignore. Japan has a pretty lengthy list of regional exclusive games, but what if I told you there was a game so exclusive that Japan didn't even get it? Kind of. Let me tell you the story of Panel Depon 64. Now, if the name Panel Depon doesn't sound familiar to you, that's totally understandable, because over here in the West, the game was actually called Tetris Attack, which is kind of an interesting change because the game doesn't have anything to do with Tetris, or really even Panel Depon. You see, when you start Tetris Attack up, you find that it's a Yoshi game, or more so just has a Yoshi aesthetic. Tetris Attack is actually more of a puzzle game, with the objective of matching 3 or more blocks of the same color to keep your ever-growing stack from touching the top of the screen. Extremely simple concept, but I'm not gonna lie, this is legitimately my favorite game for the Super Nintendo. The gameplay is just addictive, and there's something so calming about seeing Yoshi's cute little face. Oh my god! Genuinely just an amazing game. So why did I say it has nothing to do with Panel Depon if they're the same game? And that's because the two look totally different. While the gameplay is exactly the same between the two, the version Japan got was filled with magical fairy girls, while America got Yoshi and his little buddies. Now, you could argue that this isn't a huge change, but I would disagree. I think the different aesthetic make these two essentially totally different games. Obviously, when they ported it over to the West, the magical fairy girls just weren't really going to sell well, so they had to make a few changes. And to me, at least, this makes Panel Depon essentially a Japanese exclusive game. So how does a Super Nintendo game relate to the Nintendo 64? Ochitsuete soko ni tsukimasu. First, we gotta talk about Pokemon. If this gameplay looks familiar, that's because the N64 did get a game called Pokemon Puzzle League, which is very clearly just an updated version of Panel Depon or Tetris Attack or whatever you want to call it. The game hosts plenty of new modes, including a 4-player mode and a brand new 3D mode. Welcome to the future. So now you must be thinking, well, if Tetris Attack is just a reskin of Panel Depon, then Pokemon Puzzle League must just be a reskin of Panel Depon 64. And the answer is sorta. So here's where things start to get a little complicated. Panel Depon 64 doesn't actually exist. But if that's the case, then how did we get Pokemon Puzzle League? Now you're probably thinking, duh, Shea, they just took the original Super Nintendo game, updated it to have a few more N64 exclusive modes, and then slapped on a Pokemon theme so that it sells like hotcakes. And that's what you would be thinking if you had a little baby brain. For us big handsome big brain boys, we did a little bit of digging. And after doing so, found a video of this guy playing a development cart of Panel Depon 64. Now, as far as anyone is concerned, this is an authentic development cart, which means that Panel Depon 64 did at one point exist. So what does that mean? From here we can conclude that Nintendo began development of Panel Depon 64, but before completion of the game, they decided mid-development to completely revamp the game to have a Pokemon aesthetic in order to sell more copies. Case closed. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe, as I will always have more content coming your way. Did you really think that's as far as the rabbit hole goes? No.
It goes much deeper.
So the odd thing here is that Pokemon Puzzle League was a Western exclusive. Japan never saw this game. So you'd think that it's probably like the Super Nintendo games, where Japan gets paneled upon and then America gets its much cooler younger brother. But if you remember, Paneled Upon 64 was never released in Japan. From what we see in the beta cart footage is an almost complete game of Paneled Upon 64, which is also fairly different from what Pokemon Puzzle League ended up turning into. So here's my expert gamer opinion. I think development of Paneled Upon 64 transitioned over to Pokemon Puzzle League for one very important reason: the timeline. You see, by the time Paneled Upon 64 had nearly finished its development, we were already in the year 2000. While in America, it felt like we had plenty of time left to cherish our N64s, Japan had already begun their plans to release the GameCube. Knowing the Japanese N64 market was starting to dwindle, Nintendo made the decision to totally revamp the original game into Pokemon Puzzle League and release it solely in the West. And this leads us to the final puzzle piece of our investigation. If they had a completed ROM of Paneled Upon 64, why did they never release that? And that's because they did, but on the GameCube. A game called the Nintendo Puzzle Collection was released exclusively in Japan for the GameCube, which included 3 games, one being a port of Dr. Mario 64, a totally new version of Yoshi's Cookie, and the port of the unreleased Paneled Upon 64. And in the end, even though the N64 didn't see a Paneled Upon game, I am happy to say that Paneled Upon 64 did get a release, which is more than I could ever ask for. Unfortunately, you have to buy a Japanese GameCube to play it. Well, thanks everyone for coming along with me on this ride. Still pretty new at this, but I really want to get back into making YouTube videos. It's a big passion of mine. Thank you for watching. Please remember to like, comment, and subscribe. It really means a lot to me. And let me know if you already knew about Paneled Upon. I know they already added it to Switch Online in Super Nintendo, so yeah. Anyways, I just thought I would tell you guys about this cool piece of trivia, and I appreciate you watching. But I'll see you around, guys. Goodbye.